With the new set release coming out, I wanted to discuss deck building concepts, especially like advanced deck building. I know a lot of people are, wanting to build the new heroes. For me, I think that Fang and Marionette are kind of a little bit simpler to build. They have less cards, especially less good cards. But I think Cindra, she just has an insanely deep card pool and a lot of design space and deck design space, especially it can be kind of hard to choose exactly what cards you want to put in your deck and what you want your deck to look like. When you first look at all of Syndra's cards, you realize that she just has a ton of powerful cards, right? Obviously her Majestics do a ton of damage, right? Like the most obvious one, Blood Runs Deep. This card's crazy. Devotion Never Dies, but then she also has like a bunch of commons that just and rares that deal a bunch of damage, like Dragon Power just being a 1 for 7, Art of Dragon Fire being a 1 for 5 that deals 2 damage. They're both 1 for 7s, which is the same rate as Chase the Tail, right? Spreading Flames is obviously a good card. It just, is Art of War style effect. Rake Over the Coals also gives you an Art of War style effect. Poison Blade pumps all your dagger attacks, and you can attack with your daggers a million times, especially with a new chess piece. And then Oath of Loyalty is just like a 0 for 4 go against starter that blocks 3. So she just has a ton of powerful cards that when you start building Cindra, it might be tempting to just put all these cards in the same deck and say, okay, I'm going to put them all in the same deck. If I multiply all these cards by 3, I have 39, plus I'm going to play, 3 yellow brands. So it's 42. Let's put in 18 blue, so we draw a blue hand, and then let's just get into playing. And then you might get into playing the games and realize, this deck actually just doesn't do anything at all. So let's discuss how I would approach deck building, and especially like if you are testing and maybe even just playing on Talishar, right, and iterating over time, how I would be deck building for Cindra. What I would do first is I would try to make multiple builds of Cindra that are focused on different things. First of all, right, you could build the deck that is just making the fealty, right? You're just going to play Art of Dragon Fire, Dragon Power, and just try and hit your opponent with those cards. And then eventually your opponent is going to die because of your value. So that sort of deck might want to play Mask Momentum because it's a really strong play pattern to go Kunai, Art of Dragon Fire, right? And when that represents a Mask Momentum trigger, you're feeling pretty strong. So if you're trying to build that style of deck, what I would do is I would look up fealty in the search bar on February. I always do all my deck building on February. But you just look up fealty on February and you see all these cards that, are on rate cards that if you've played or if you've attacked with a draconic attack already, they get go again and make a fealty token. I would start adding these cards that make fealty tokens. I would look up any cards that mark, right? Start putting in the cards that look good, right? Especially like the Draconic Ninja ones. Put those in my deck. I would put in, Brand with Cinder Claw. Put in 9 of these. And then I would put in the cards that care about being Draconic. So Dragon Power, Art of Dragon Fire, Art of Dragon Claw, Art of Dragon Blood, Devotion Never Dies. This one doesn't actually care about being Draconic, but if it's Draconic, then you can just play it over and over again. I would play those cards, and then I would play the fealty, the brands, and the mark cards. I would put them all into a deck and just make sure that that works. And then once I've been playing with the deck a little bit, I would say, okay, can I cut any of the fealty cards? Because maybe I'm making too many fealty, right? Like maybe I get into a game and I've made like 6 fealty, and I only drew like 3 of these cards that really care about becoming Draconic. Well, maybe my deck is a little too good at making fealty. Maybe instead of playing these cards that are like on rate and make fealty, I can play some cards that are maybe above rate. So like maybe I can take some out, add in some other cards that are like just strong in general, like maybe Spreading Flame, something like that. Just adding cards that are strong, but don't necessarily fit the game plan. But we know that we can take out some cards from the game plan because we're just not using all the resources that we're creating. Then once I've made that style of deck, the next thing I would do is build a different type of Cindra deck, right? I would then build a Cindra deck that says, okay, I'm just going to play Spreading Flames, Mask the Pouncing Lynx, and I'm going to send 35 damage on one turn, and that's going to be enough to kill my opponent. If I'm playing that deck, what I would do is I would just play as much Draconic Go Again as possible, right? So I would just say Draconic Go Again. And then I would just start adding any Draconic cards with Go Again, right? There's these cards that cost 1 less for each Draconic Chain Link you control. There's the New Age Lava Burst, if I can find it. Oh, it doesn't have Go Again. It does have cost 3, though, in Draconic. This Compounding Anger card, add that card. Once I've added a bunch of Go Again cards, and Spreading Flames, and Rake Over the Coals, and Mask the Pouncing Lynx, and Salt the Wound, and Lava Burst, and Oath of Loyalty, I would get into game and just see, okay, how fast am I playing my Spreading Flames combo? Am I playing it on average, like turn 4 or turn 5? Am I playing it maybe earlier? Am I, on average, just killing my opponent when I play my Spreading Flames combo and break my Mask of the Pouncing Lynx? Is it something that just floats a disruption, right? And once I've played a bunch of games and figured out, the averages on when I'm killing my opponent, if the Spreading Flames combo is actually good, how good Mask of the Pouncing Lynx actually is in that, then I would consider other cards in the deck, right? I would start testing like, oh, maybe Mask of Momentum is playable in this deck, or maybe I want to add some other cards that are strong in general, like the Art of the Dragons, and maybe add some Fealty Generation in there. Maybe it doesn't hurt the deck as much as I think it does. Maybe I play Devotion Never Dies in the deck, even though it doesn't necessarily always fit with my Spreading Flames combo. It is just kind of a strong card that maybe I can play in the deck. So you start with a deck that's on an extreme, and then you test to see, you test the deck to see, okay, does it actually do the thing I want to do? And do I need all the cards in the deck to do the thing I want to do? If the answer is, oh, you don't actually need all of these cards, you can start adding cards that are like generically strong, right? Cards like Snatch, maybe some other like random Draconic cards, right? Lava Burst, right? And then eventually you'll come to a deck that is stronger than the one that you initially started with, and also stronger than a deck where you just kind of put all the strong cards in and hope it worked. And then eventually, after enough testing, maybe all the cards coalesce into the correct Cindra deck that gets to play all of her strong cards while having a base of cards that make everything work. Maybe that's not possible, maybe it is. But if you start at the extremes and move towards more of a median strategy, then you can more easily test to see if cards work. Whereas if you start by just putting good cards in your deck and hoping it works, well, it's really hard to test what's actually working, right? Because if you're killing your opponent because you're playing good cards, well, how do you know which cards are like the actual good cards in your deck? And if you are losing the game, how do you know what cards are making you lose the game, right? It's much easier if you just start with a deck that, does exactly one thing. We're going to do it every game. We're going to do it multiple times a game. I hope that was helpful to everybody trying to build for this upcoming set. I think that these deck building strategies can work for any type of hero in the game. So I would recommend taking your favorite hero, whether it's Fang, Cindra, or Marionette, or even Slip Through the Cracks, and trying to deck build in this way instead of just kind of randomly shoving all the good cards in your deck.